He told me he was working late. That's how it started. That's how it always starts, isn't it? Something small. Something you've heard 1,000 times before. A little thing that shouldn't make your heart skip or your chest tighten. But for some reason, this time it did. He sent a text around 6:40. Sorry, babe, looks like another late night. Johnson's messing up the quarterlies again. I'll eat something from the vending machine. Don't wait up. And I didn't think anything of it. Not then. We'd been together for 2.5 years. Lived together for one. He worked in finance, some kind of corporate job with spreadsheets and meetings I never fully understood. I worked at a publishing house downtown, assistant editor, long hours, short breaks, coffee-fueled days. We saw each other mostly in the evenings, both tired, both in need of comfort more than conversation. He was good at comforting me. That was one of the reasons I fell in love with him. He had this way of listening with his whole body. Like everything I said mattered. He never interrupted. He remembered little details. He'd make tea without being asked when I looked worn out. He rubbed my back when I curled up on the couch with a migraine. He made me feel seen. So when he started working late more often, I didn't ask questions. Not at first. It became a pattern. Tuesdays and Thursdays were almost always late. Sometimes Mondays too. He'd come home around 10 or 11, sometimes after midnight. He always looked exhausted. Tie loosened, laptop bag slung over one shoulder. He'd kiss my forehead, murmur something about a long day, and collapse on the bed. I made excuses for him. He's stressed. His company's been downsizing. He's the only one pulling weight. The market's crazy right now. I believed all of it because I wanted to. Because the truth is, I didn't want to imagine the alternative. But then there was the charger. I found it by accident, in the side pocket of his gym bag. I was looking for his water bottle. He always forgot it. Instead, I found an iPhone charger. Except it wasn't for his phone. He had a USB-C charger. This one was a lightning cable, for an older model. Not his work phone either. That was on the counter charging. I brought it up casually that night. Hey, whose charger is this? He looked up from his laptop, squinted. Oh, that? Probably someone from work. I borrowed it one night. Forgot it was in there. He smiled. And I smiled back. But something inside me twitched. After that, I started noticing little things. A receipt in his coat pocket, 2 coffees and a muffin from a place across town, timestamped 7:42 a.m. He told me he'd skipped breakfast that day. A long blonde hair on his scarf that definitely wasn't mine. A second toothbrush tucked into the travel pouch he kept in his car. I told myself it was nothing. That I was being paranoid. Until the hotel points. We shared a credit card. Not because we had to, we both worked and split bills. But it made travel easier. Every couple of months I'd log in to check our balance. And that's when I saw it. A new rewards number linked to our account. Under his name. Except we hadn't traveled anywhere recently. And I never saw a confirmation email or booking. So I called the hotel. Hi, I'm just trying to confirm a stay under my partner's name. He's asked me to check on the points, and I think the dates were mixed up. The front desk clerk was too helpful. She gave me everything. Yes, ma'am, we had a Mr. James Warren check-in on March 16th for 2 nights. King Suite. 2 guests. I don't remember what I said next. Something about a mistake. A thank you. I ended the call and sat there staring at my screen for what felt like hours. That was the moment I knew. Not suspected. Not feared. I knew. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay next to him in bed, watching his back rise and fall. Every inch of my skin felt foreign. I felt like I was trapped in someone else's life. In someone else's house. In someone else's story. And I kept asking myself the same question over and over. Who is she? The next morning, I couldn't look him in the eye. He kissed my forehead like usual, thanked me for making coffee, and headed out the door with his laptop bag slung over his shoulder. I watched him walk to his car from the window. Same routine. Same calm, confident stride. And I felt sick. I didn't go to work that day. I called in, lied about a stomach bug, and sat at the kitchen table in my robe, staring at our joint credit card account. The hotel points were still there, taunting me. King Suite. 2 nights. 2 guests. I could have confronted him right then. But something in me wanted more than just the truth. I wanted proof. I needed to know who she was. What she looked like. If she knew about me. If she sat in the passenger seat of his car while I was home cooking dinner and folding his laundry. I wanted to see the lie in full, in all its disgusting clarity. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I followed him. It was a Thursday, one of his usual late nights. I pretended everything was normal that morning. Kissed him on the cheek, told him good luck with the quarterly reports, and even packed him a sandwich for lunch. He smiled and said he might be late, not to wait up. I left the apartment 10 minutes after he did. I parked 2 streets over and waited. He left the office around 6:10. I followed at a distance, heart thudding so loud I thought it would break through my ribs. He didn't go to his coworker's place. Or a bar. or anywhere near his office. He drove 20 minutes across the city, past the part of town where we lived, into a quiet neighborhood with tree-lined streets and pastel-colored houses. The kind of place where everyone has a golden retriever and a porch swing. He turned into a driveway like he'd done it 100 times. Garage opened. Car disappeared inside. Garage closed. I parked a few houses down. And I waited. 20 minutes passed. My hands were sweating on the steering wheel. Then the front door opened. And she walked out. She was tall. Pretty. Maybe early 30s. Wore her hair in a loose ponytail and carried a baby on her hip. Baby. No older than 1. She waved to someone inside the house, my boyfriend, and got into a different car parked in the driveway. She drove away. I didn't breathe for a full minute. I couldn't. My lungs refused to work. My heart was sprinting ahead of me, trying to process what I had just seen. He didn't just cheat on me. He had a family. I waited until the lights in the living room flicked on. I waited until I saw him walk past the window holding the baby. He was bouncing it gently, smiling, wearing the same shirt he wore when he left our apartment that morning. I had seen enough. I backed out slowly, heart in my throat, tears blurring the road. When I got home, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat on the floor of our apartment for what felt like hours, wrapping my arms around my knees, trying to keep myself from falling apart. I checked his phone records that night. I had never done that before. We weren't the couple who spied on each other. At least, I wasn't. But that night, all bets were off. There were dozens of calls to the same number. Some early morning. Some late night. Always quick. Always frequent. I copied the number. I stared at it. And then I called it. She answered on the 3rd ring. Hello? Her voice was soft. Tired. Like a mom who hadn't had a full night of sleep in weeks. I swallowed hard. Hi, I said. I'm sorry to bother you. I think we need to talk about James. There was a long pause on the other end. Who is this? I'm his. I hesitated. I was going to say girlfriend. But it felt wrong now. I'm someone he's been seeing for the last 2 years. Silence. Then she laughed. A short, bitter, broken sound. Of course you are, she said. You knew? Not exactly, she said. But I knew something wasn't right. I waited. She didn't hang up. He told me he was traveling for work twice a week. Every week. That's when he saw you, I guess. Her voice cracked a little. We got married last year. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. And the baby? Ours, she said. She's 11 months old. Her name is Hazel. I'm so sorry, I whispered. Me too, she said. Then she hung up. After the call, I sat on the bathroom floor in the dark for a long time. Not crying. Not moving. Just sitting there, feeling like every piece of my reality had been shattered into sharp little fragments I didn't know how to pick up. He had a wife. A child. A whole life that had nothing to do with me. And I had no idea. I replayed everything. Every late night. Every work emergency. Every time he smiled at me and said he loved me, while knowing he was going home to someone else. Changing diapers. Kissing a different forehead goodnight. I felt like an idiot. But mostly, I felt something deeper. Something uglier. Humiliation. Because I let him into every part of my life. I introduced him to my friends, brought him to my sister's wedding, made space for him in my home, my schedule, my future. I asked him what baby names he liked. And he already had a baby. I didn't sleep that night. When he came home past midnight, he walked in like nothing was wrong, tossed his keys in the dish by the door, kicked off his shoes, started pulling off his tie. Hey, he said casually. You're still up. I looked at him from the couch. Calm. Cold. Detached. Where were you? I asked. He didn't even flinch. I told you. Late night at the office. We're rolling out. No, I cut him off. Try again. This time without the lie. He froze. Then gave me a cautious smile. Babe. Don't. Don't babe me right now. Something in my voice must have hit him. Because that's when he paused. Really paused. His eyes narrowed. What's going on? I know, I said. He blinked. Know what? I know about her. That's when his face changed. His whole body shifted. Shoulders tense. Hands still. What are you talking about? I stood up slowly, holding his phone records in one hand and my own phone in the other. I called her. He stared at me like he didn't understand. Your wife, James. I called your wife. The color drained from his face. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. No words came out. I pressed forward. You told me you were working late. You were bouncing your daughter on your hip in someone else's living room. Still silence. You lied to me every week for almost a year. You held me, kissed me, looked me in the eyes and told me I was the only one, while your wedding ring sat in some drawer across town. Stop, he said finally, his voice hoarse. Why? You didn't. He dropped onto the arm of the couch like his legs couldn't hold him anymore. His head sank into his hands. I never meant for it to happen like this. I laughed. Oh, so this was all just an accident? Whoops, I proposed to someone else. Whoops, we had a child. But hey, I didn't mean to. It started before I met you, he said, barely above a whisper. I didn't know how to get out of it. She got pregnant and… And what? You thought the solution was to live two lives? You thought that was less painful than telling the truth. I loved you, he said, looking up finally. I still do. That hurt worse than anything. Because part of me wanted to believe it. Part of me still wanted to believe that somewhere in all this mess, there was something real. Something that hadn't been fake or twisted or used. But love doesn't live in lies. Love doesn't steal your choices. Love doesn't hide wedding rings and babies and entire marriages. I walked past him and opened the hall closet. What are you doing? He asked. I pulled out the spare suitcase and started packing. Not his things, mine. I knew I couldn't sleep here. Not even one more night. You're leaving, he asked. I'm leaving, I said. And you're going to tell her the truth now, not me. I already told her everything. Not everything, I snapped. Not about me. Not really. And you owe her that. You owe both of us that. He just sat there hollow, watching as I packed socks and sweaters and jeans with shaking hands. Before I walked out the door, he stood up like he was going to stop me. Maybe say something that would fix it all. But I didn't let him speak. I looked him in the eye one last time. You didn't just break my heart, I said quietly. You made me feel like I didn't even exist. Then I closed the door behind me. The first few nights after I left were the hardest. Not because I missed him, although sometimes I did, in ways that made me hate myself, but because I didn't know what to do next. I stayed on my friend Mia's couch. She didn't ask questions. Just gave me a blanket, a mug of chamomile tea, and space to fall apart quietly. And I did. The mornings were the worst. Because I'd wake up and forget, just for a moment, that everything had changed. I'd reach for my phone, expecting a good morning text that would never come. I'd turn toward the space beside me and find a pillow, not a person. The silence was louder than anything I'd ever heard. I stopped eating for a while. Not because I was trying to. My stomach just couldn't handle the weight of food and grief at the same time. I drank water, nibbled at toast, cried in the shower until I was lightheaded. I still went to work, but I moved through the office like a ghost. People asked if I was okay. I lied. Some nights, I almost texted him. Just to ask why. Just to make him say it all again. Just to feel like I still had some kind of power, even if it came from pain. But I never hit send. Because I knew he didn't have anything left to say that would make any of it better. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal. It was realizing how much of my identity had been tied to someone who never truly existed. Because the man I loved, the man who made my tea, remembered my deadlines, kissed my shoulder when I was too tired to talk, that man was a ghost. A character in a story I didn't know I was reading fictionally. I started therapy again. I had stopped a year ago, when things felt good, when I told myself I was finally past the messy years of my early 20s. Turns out you're never really past anything. You're just in remission. And when life wants to break you, it doesn't ask if you're ready. It just does. The therapist's office smelled like lavender and wood polish. She had soft eyes and didn't flinch when I told her the truth. She let me talk about the affair, the baby, the other woman. But mostly she asked me about me. And I realized I didn't know how to answer. I didn't know who I was without him. So I started figuring that out. Small things at first. I cut my hair. Not dramatically, but enough to feel like I could shed something invisible that had been clinging to me. I bought a journal and started writing one page every morning, even if all I wrote was, I don't know what I'm doing. I blocked his number after 2 weeks of silence. He never tried to reach out, not even once. And for some reason, that hurt more than anything he did, because it meant he had already let me go. I had been temporary, a half-life he never intended to keep. That realization was the beginning of a different kind of pain, the kind that doesn't scream, the kind that simmers. Meanwhile, I was left cleaning up the pieces, canceling shared accounts, closing the joint credit card, calling the landlord to ask if I could be removed from the lease. She said no. I was stuck with the contract until the end of the year. I swallowed the bitterness and said thank you anyway. I went back to our old apartment once when he was at work, just to grab the rest of my things. Mia came with me. We moved quickly. Clothes, books, a few framed photos I didn't have the heart to throw out yet. I left his keys on the kitchen table, face down. It didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a museum of someone else's life. One night, about a month after I'd left, I got a message from an unknown number. I knew it was him before I opened it. All it said was, I never wanted to hurt you. I stared at it for a long time. I typed something, then deleted it. Typed again, deleted again. And finally, I closed the message, turned off my phone, and let the silence swallow it whole. Because at some point, not replying becomes the most powerful thing you can do. Healing wasn't linear. I wish it had been. Some days I woke up feeling almost normal, Like maybe everything had just been a bad dream and I was finally on the other side of it. Other days, I couldn't bring myself to get out of bed. I'd stare at the ceiling for hours, scrolling through old photos, hating myself for still missing him. But I kept moving. Slowly. I started walking every morning before work. Just around the neighborhood, 15 or 20 minutes, headphones in but no music playing. I needed the motion. The rhythm of footsteps on pavement, the sound of birds waking up, the cold air that reminded me I was still here. Still breathing. Still alive. At work, things began to improve. I stopped zoning out in meetings. I started speaking up again, even if my voice still felt a little shaky. One of the senior editors pulled me aside after a pitch and told me she was impressed. It was the first compliment I'd believed in months. Mia kept being my anchor. She didn't push me to get over it. She didn't feed me toxic positivity. She just made space for me to be sad and messy and inconsistent. When I wanted to cry, she handed me tissues. When I wanted to scream, she handed me tequila. When I wanted to be alone, she gave me space and left a snack outside my door like a cat. And little by little, I started to feel like myself again. Not the old me. Someone new. Someone quieter. Less trusting. But stronger. One night, about 3 months after I walked out of his apartment, I saw him again. I was coming out of a bookstore downtown. It was raining, not heavily, just enough to make the street lights shimmer on the pavement. I had a tote bag full of poetry and a lavender latte I hadn't touched. He was standing across the street. He looked exactly the same. Same coat. Same walk. Same faint smirk that used to make me melt. He didn't see me at first. He was holding hands with her. She looked tired. Not in a bad way, just like someone who had a lot to carry. A stroller was parked next to them. Their baby, I assumed, was asleep under a fluffy pink blanket. They looked like a family. I stood there for a long time, hidden behind a bus stop, watching them. Watching him. And I didn't feel the stab I expected. I didn't feel rage or heartbreak or longing. I felt nothing. He didn't look at me once. And eventually they walked away. That night, I went home and wrote my longest journal entry yet. 5 pages. All the things I wished I'd said. All the things I was glad I hadn't. And by the time I finished, my hand was cramping and I realized I hadn't thought about texting him in weeks. I was finally letting go. But closure didn't come all at once. It came in moments. It came when I closed the credit card account that had both our names on it. It came when I donated the last sweater he left in my closet. It came when I updated my emergency contact form at work and erased his number. And it came the day I stopped wondering whether he ever thought about me. Because maybe he did. But I didn't care anymore. A few weeks later, I moved into a new apartment. Nothing fancy, a small 1-bedroom on the 3rd floor of an old building with creaky floors and no elevator. The walls were slightly uneven, the windows whistled in the wind, and the water pressure was hit or miss. But it was mine. Every inch of it. I painted the bedroom walls sage green and bought a tiny secondhand dining table off Facebook Marketplace. Hung a gallery wall of thrifted art I picked out one weekend on a whim. Got a lavender diffuser for the hallway and a soft white rug I wasn't sure I could afford, but bought anyway because it made the place feel warm. I stopped flinching when people asked if I was seeing anyone. I started saying no, without feeling like I owed them a story. I wasn't hiding. I just wasn't looking. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't building a life around someone else. I was building it around me. The freedom was strange at first. Quiet. Lonely. But also peaceful. I started going to open mics again, something I hadn't done since college. I didn't read anything the first few times. I just watched. Listened. Let the words of strangers fill the cracks in me. Eventually, I brought a few poems of my own. Read one about betrayal. One about beginnings. One about not saying goodbye. People clapped. Some smiled. One woman came up after and said, "That felt like you wrote it about me." I smiled and told her I probably did. Because pain is never just ours. We carry it quietly. But so does everyone else. And maybe that's what healing is. Not forgetting. But seeing your own scars on someone else and realizing you're not alone. One Saturday morning, I went to the park with a book and a thermos of tea. It was sunny but not too hot. Kids were playing nearby. A couple tossed a frisbee. I laid in the grass and watched the clouds drift. My phone buzzed in my bag. I didn't check it immediately. I didn't feel the urgency I used to. Eventually, I pulled it out. A number I didn't recognize. But I had a guess. I opened it anyway. "I'm sorry. I think about you all the time. I just wanted to say that." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I locked my phone and slipped it back into my bag. Not because I was angry. Not because I wanted to hurt him. But because I had nothing left to say. I had said it all in silence. In moving forward. In choosing myself again and again. Every single day since the moment I walked out. Let him sit with it. Let him wonder what I would have said if he'd reached out sooner. If he'd told the truth. If he'd been a better man. Let him carry the weight of what he broke. Because I was done carrying it for him. And as I lay there in the sun, surrounded by the soft sounds of life moving on, I realized something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. I was happy. Not perfectly. Not always. But in a way that was mine. And no one could take that away from me again.